Okay, good evening, students. Hillary and Anusha here. I wanted to introduce Dr. Anusha Parval here, who's a great friend and colleague who's joined our faculty and will be doing our webinar series for your class, and we'll also be teaching live in some of the other classes that we're running around the country as well. Anusha's here with us tonight to review and maybe add a few extra components to the topic of the six tastes, the shad rasa, and she's going to touch upon vipaka tonight as well. We're going to go for about 40 minutes with this lecture, and you should accumulate some questions and forward them on to me, and we will review those questions on our April 1st evening call. So welcome tonight, and I'll let Anusha get started, and I'm going to step aside. Okay, thanks, Anusha.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's lovely to meet you. My name is Dr. Anusha. I'm an Ayurvedic physician trained in India. And I have to say that though this is my profession, it's also my great interest and privilege to be in the field of Ayurveda. So I'm very happy to share my insights and what I have learned along the way, and also have much more to learn in this great science. So today we're going to be talking about the shad rasas, or the six different tastes as per Ayurveda. And this is a bit unique because of the fact that in other systems, they speak of the different tastes that are perceived. However, in Ayurveda, they've broken it up into six as opposed to four, and now they recently added on the fifth one, which is umami. In Ayurveda, we speak of six different tastes. And the reason they have six different tastes is because these are tastes that can be perceived through the tongue, but they also are, it's important because they represent the different elemental constitution of a substance. So for instance, when we look at, in Ayurveda, we say that everything that you consume is very important. They have certain qualities, and that contributes to either increasing your health, or it contributes to nourishment, or it has a particular effect on the person. So how do we understand that effect? How do we identify what's the composition or what's present in these different things that we consume, these different types of foods or whatever substance it may be? So one way to understand the composition of that substance or the effect that it may have is through the taste. And in that's how they've differentiated and come up with six different tastes. So the six are sweet, sour, salty, bitter, astringent, and pungent. I'm sorry, I may have just skipped the order a little bit. But these are the six different tastes. And these tastes, again, they represent the elemental composition of the food. It also represents the properties and the probable action of that substance. That's why identifying the rasa, or the taste in a food, is very important, because it gives us a lot of information, and it gives us a very clear idea as to what this substance, the effect it's going to have on the person that consumes it. Okay, so as you know, the different tastes are perceived through the tongue. The six tastes again, sweet or madhura. I'll just go through the elemental composition of that, and this is in your manual. It's in one of the tables. So sweet is madhura, and that is composed of the earth and water element. And if you remember in the earlier chapters of your manual, where we went through the 5 different elements. So just a brief review, the 5 different elements are ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And in that order, it goes from the lightest to the most gross or the most heavy. And that's important to remember in that order, because that also gives us an idea as to how the doshas were formed, which dosha represents which combination of elements. And in the same way, in that order, we also understand how these tastes were formed. So the concept is that everything in the universe consists of these five elements. So if the representation of those elements are the doshas in a human body, the representation of those elements in the food that we eat is shown through these tastes. So if we're breaking everything down into element composition, what elements, the order of elements in a person's body, and the order of elements in what they're giving in, or what they're intaking, then you really get a clear picture as to which things are coming together and what helps to negate what what's present. So that's why it's really important, because you can say that food can be used as a medicine. Food can actually help to heal you. This is the way it can be used, because in by the elemental breakup, in which doshas are present in the person's body, at what level they are, if it's aggravated or if it's balanced or if it is in a decreased position. And if that's the case, then we can use foods with certain tastes that would help to either increase that dosha if it's decreased, or if it's above normal, then help to pacify that dosha because of the same elements that are present in the food that you're consuming. Okay? So in that sense, again, I'll just go over the chart. So sweet is made up of earth and water. Sour or amla is made up of fire and earth. Salty is made up of fire and water. Pungent is made up of fire and air. Bitter is made up of air and ether. And astringent is made up of air and earth. And these are, again, the composition of the different tastes. And the way we understand that is, again, according to inference of how it affects the body. Okay? So the sweet, sour, and salty, the first three tastes actually increase kapha. The effects it has on the doshas is that these three tastes increase kapha. And the last three tastes reduce kapha. And why is that? It's because the first three tastes, if you look at the composition, the first three tastes, they have a predominance of water and earth. So the water and earth actually is the elemental composition of the kapha dosha. And because of the presence of water and earth, excuse me just one second.
Hi, just stepping in for a moment while Anusha stepped out. Just wanted to remind you that we are looking at the manual, the pages 100 onwards. So we're looking at the chart on 101 as well. So, okay, I was just filling them in on where to look in the manual for what we're talking about. I'll check out again.
Okay, sorry about that. So sorry. So, yeah, so we were talking about the effect of the different tastes on the doshas. And the reason that we looked at the first three tastes, they help in increasing kapha. And the reason it increases kapha is because the elemental breakup of these rasas are the same or very similar to the composition of kapha. And the composition of kapha is water and earth. So sweet has both earth and water. So it definitely would help in increasing kapha because like increases like. Same with sour has the earth element. So it will increase kapha, but not as significantly as the sweet taste would, because the sweet taste has both the elements, whereas sour has only one of the elements of kapha. And similarly, again, salty would also increase kapha because of the presence of water. And again, for the last three tastes, the reason they decrease kapha is because they're opposite or antagonistic to the elemental breakup of kapha. So fire, air, air and ether, or air and earth. Earth is the only one present in astringent, which kind of has the same element as kapha, but because of the presence of air and the way it's made up, the air element is more stronger than the earth element in astringent. So it doesn't really help in increasing kapha. Instead, it decreases kapha. So with that logic, we understand why these tastes help in increasing kapha. And in same way, conversely, the first three tastes help in decreasing vata, and the last three tastes help in increasing vata. And this happens because of the same issue, where in the first three tastes, they have elements that are opposite to vata. Earth, water, and fire, earth, fire, water. These all actually are more gross elements. They're more heavy, and also they're opposite to the elements that are present in vata, which are air and ether, which are the lighter elements. They're the first two elements in the order that we talked about. So again, that's the reason why these elements in the first three tastes help to pacify vata, because they're opposite. It doesn't contribute to the elements present in vata. It instead helps to pacify it. So if you had a condition where, or if you find that there is an aggravated vata, there is an increase of vata, foods which are sweet or sour or salty, they all help in pacifying that vata. Okay? So we've talked about the increase of kapha and the increase of vata and the tastes that affect the increase and decrease of these doshas. And in pitta, there's a slight different configuration of which rasas affects it, either in an aggravated state or help in pacifying it. So the tastes that actually help in decreasing pitta are again those which are opposite to its elemental breakup. The elemental breakup for pitta is tejas or fire and water or jal. And because of that, excuse me, because of that, sweet, bitter, and astringent help to pacify pitta, because these are the only tastes that do not have, they have, again, elemental composition opposite to that of pitta. Sweet does have jala in it, but again, it also has prithvi. So that helps to, again, pacify the intensity. In case there is a condition where the pitta or the fire element of pitta is more, then sweet, even though it has jala in it, helps to pacify that. So that's why sweet is considered as a taste that pacifies pitta. And the opposite of that is the tastes that have either fire element or water element will help to increase pitta. So in that, there is sour, salty, and pungent. These are the three tastes that increase pitta, or they aggravate pitta. And the reason they aggravate pitta is because of the presence of fire. All three of these tastes have the presence of fire, and that will definitely increase pitta. Whenever you, even though pitta, the funny thing about pitta is, even though it has the elemental breakup of fire and water. Whenever you're talking about an increase of pitta, it's usually an increase of the fire element. That really contributes to the increase of pitta. Whereas when there's a decrease of pitta, it's typically the water element, the water element present in pitta that has gone out of its normal balance. So that contributes to the decrease of pitta, or um, kshaya of pitta. When the water element of pitta tends to become more and it pacifies the fire part of pitta, that actually causes a kshaya, or a decrease of pitta. So that's why whenever we're looking at the taste or foods, substances that have either sweet, salty, sour, or pungent, because of the presence of the fire element in these, it increases pitta. Okay? In general, if we wanted to look again, so we've looked at how these tastes affect the different doshas. Again, these tastes also have its effect on the dhatus, because again, every system in the body is broken up into these 5 elements. We can understand everything in that happens, or all physiological functioning, everything that's occurring in the body and the processes, by the composition or by the presence of these 5 elements. And equivalent to that is whatever we put into the body with these 5 elements. So if we were to look at how the tastes affect the dhatus, or the different tissues in the body, the sweet taste it's anabolic. It helps in increasing the tissues. It helps in actually building of the tissues. Um, the sour taste it helps in increasing agni, or fire element, but it also can cause the decrease due to, if there's overconsumption, it can cause a decrease of the last dhatu, or the shukra dhatu, so, or the last tissue. All the other types of taste, they're all considered as catabolic. So that would be salty, pungent, bitter, and astringent. All 4 of these tastes are considered as catabolic, or they decrease the tissues. They don't actually contribute to building of the tissues. Okay. Excuse me. If we want to look at the next table, where you have the effects of each one of these tastes. If we look at the effects of these tastes, so again, the sweet taste, it enhances ojas, it promotes the growth of all the tissues, again, because of the presence of the earth and water elements. It actually, if you look at earth and water, they're the grossest of the elements. So if you wanted to actually contribute to growth, or to increasing of a physical substance, promotion of proliferation of cells, or to build something, you need something more solid. And that's what the sweet taste is. It, because of the presence of earth and water, the grossest of the elements, it helps to actually form building blocks in a way. So because of consumption of the sweet taste, it actually helps to build. Now, obviously, everything has to go into a balance. So if you consume excessive sweet, that would be overnourishment, or that would actually cause other issues as well. So even though these have positive effects, they obviously have to be taken again in a balanced condition. They have to make sure that it's not excessive. So again, the sweet taste, it improves complexion. The reason again why it does that, and when you are later on introduced to the different tissues, you'll see that the first two tissues are actually responsible for a person's complexion, for glow, for their color, and this taste helps in nourishing those first two elements. So that's why it helps in improving complexion. It relieves thirst, which kind of seems funny because if you have something sweet, you think you'd want to drink more water. But the fact is, thirst is considered as a dryness in the body. And it actually has to do with an increase or more presence of ether and air. So because thirst is actually a representation of an excess of ether and air, that's why sweet, being the opposite of that, helps to pacify thirst. That's why the concept of Ayurveda, they say that sweet taste helps in pacifying thirst, because it helps to reduce that excess of ether and air in the body. It again helps to pacify burning sensation. It's very cooling because of the same thing. Burning is an excess of the fire element, where the water and earth element can help to pacify that. They're more cooling, they're more gross, and because of that, it helps to pacify that burning sensation, or that representation of that excess fire in the body. And examples of foods that are sweet are complex carbohydrates, other sort of sweet substances, fruits, grains, root vegetables, sugar, honey, and milk. So these are good to know, these examples, because when we say that later on you'll come across different conditions that are associated with the doshas, an increase of the doshas. So if someone says that there is excess of kapha, then you tell them you should not have sweet things. But sweet things don't only mean actual sweet foods. It also means things which have sugars in them. And what we know from conventional nutrition, there are simple sugars, there are complex sugars, but other foods that have a lot of sugars, that have starches, are also considered, as per Ayurveda, they're considered as foods that have sweet taste, because it not only has that elemental breakup, but it also has the same effect on the body. And this kind of ties into what we're going to soon learn about vipaka and the post-digestive effect, and how that affects the body. Because again, the sweet taste, not only you can taste it or perceive it through your tongue, but it also has that reflected action in the body, where it's again contributing to the increase of kapha, and it's contributing to different parts of the body that require more amount of nourishment, require more amount of energy or calories, and also helps in actual building of tissues. Okay, so the next taste and its effects is sour. So the sour taste helps in stimulating acid secretions. It moistens food. It stimulates agni and aids digestion. And the reason, again, why it has this effect is because the presence of the fire element in this. So sour is fire and earth. And even though it has the fire element, the presence of earth, or the combination of earth, actually helps to balance the effect of the fire element in this. If it was fire element alone, it would not be able to moisten food. It would actually just burn right through the food. So the very subtle breakup and combination of these two elements, the balance of these two elements, really give a advanced effect of the sour taste. So foods with the sour taste helps in acid secretion. It actually helps a little bit in salivation as well. It increases salivation because of the balance of the earth and fire element. It When it increases salivation, again, it stimulates the person's agni. It increases stamina. It reduces gas. All of these things help in bringing about a proper metabolism, a proper cycle, so to say, of the digestive tract. So if we look at, in general, the Ayurvedic concepts of the type of foods that we eat, we say that everything that we consume in a meal, it may not necessarily combine all of these tastes in one dish, but when we eat food in a different types of food at one sitting in a meal, it should in combination have all 6 of these tastes. That is a balanced meal as per Ayurveda, because different foods have different tastes, but when we consume that, the balance of these tastes in our GIT and in our stomach actually helps in a proper breakdown, in a proper metabolism, which helps to contribute then to adequate nourishment of each and every one of the tissues, and in each and every system of the body. So you're not just increasing any one dosha, or you're not just decreasing any one dosha, but you're contributing to all 3 and contributing to a balanced state of all 3. And if you'll notice, when you went through the different seasonal regimens, it's the same thing. According to the season and according to our external atmosphere, there are certain conditions, certain times the doshas will be a little bit out of balance. And those seasons, they have also specified which type of foods would help to, again, balance out the doshas. So the increase of that dosha will not then assimilate into an actual condition or an imbalance of health. So according to the foods that they've prescribed for these seasons, again, the logic behind prescribing that is according to the different rasas and how that affects the doshas, how that would help in pacifying the doshas. Okay, so an example of sour foods are yogurts, lemons. Lemons is a great example. Limes, sour fruits, alcohol, and vinegar. Vinegar is exactly the embodiment of sour, and so are lemons. They're very good also in cleansing of the channels. Sour has that ability to cleanse the channels. It increases circulation. Again, it sharpens the senses. So that's all about the sour taste and the effects it has. Next is salty. Salty taste, it helps, its composition again is water and fire, and it enhances taste, because what happens is it alters the consistency of the person's saliva. If you have something salty, it can increase salivation, but again, depending on the quantity of the salt, it can either increase or it can cause the person it can absorb the moisture or the salivation, the amount of salivation that should occur. And so it alters the actual consistency, either it being more thick or more watery. That's the effect that salt has. And because of that, it can also, what the actual quality that's present in salt is it penetrates. It can penetrate really deep. And because of the penetration of the salt, that's what enhances and sort of gives life to your taste buds. So you ever notice that people who are foodies always tend to see that you always need a little pinch of salt with your food, because even if you add a little bit less, you really don't get the full flavor of your food. And why is that? Is because salt really invigorates your taste buds. It brings them alive. See, speaking about it, I'm salivating. So the salt actually helps to bring out the flavor. It helps to to increase absorption, to really bring your senses alive and completely perceive what's present in that food. And because of that, it strengthens the person's agni, because it actually increases the person's appetite. It makes them want to eat that food. It makes it more flavorful. Um, Also, the presence of salt improves digestion. It maintains electrolyte imbalance, and that is a subtle effect of salt if it's taken in the proper quantity. And that's the thing about salt. Salt has some very positive effects, but again, it has to be in a adequate quantity. It cannot be too less, and it cannot be too much more. And that subtle um, difference between the balance and excessive and less is really determined as per the condition or the state of doshas in an individual person. So what may be a good amount of salt for you may not actually be the proper amount of salt which is suitable for me, because again, we have our individual constitutions. We have a different level of doshas. Our doshas are at different levels for each person, according to their age, according to the stage of life, according to um, their constitution in general. So, and if they have any other predisposing factors. So in that sense, when we look at it, salt in general has these qualities. But the quantity, the actual quantity of salt, or the actual quantity of sweet foods, or the quantity of sour foods for any one of these tastes, would differ according to the person's constitution and their actual state of doshas at that time. It may change if a person is hypertensive, or they have an issue with high blood pressure. They obviously do not require more salt, even though it may have some very positive effects. But if they have that, then they can't have salt. But if a person has other health conditions but does not have this issue with blood pressure, then they can have salt. So again, depending on each person, the actual quantity can be different. And that again is understood by inference and understanding the actual um, status that they're at when you're advising, or when you're implementing this knowledge. Okay, so an example of salty substances, of course, are different types of salt, like rock salt or black salt or mineral salt, sea salt. Seaweeds naturally have a very high sodium content, or have a lot of salt in it. As for Ayurveda, there are typically 5 types of salt, which we describe in classical texts. So that's just a little tidbit for you to know. Maybe later on, we can go through what those 5 types of salts are and the effects of each type of salt. Because even though it's a salt, they don't all have the same effect. In fact, Saindava Lavana is a type of pink rock salt. They call it the Himalayan salt. And that's the one type of salt that actually can be used by people who have high blood pressure, and it will not increase their blood pressure. So it tends to have a little bit of a tingle. So when you consume that salt, it does taste salty, but it has a little bit, it has a little bit of an aftertaste, almost like if you're eating MSG, but it's not MSG, it's a natural salt. But the particular quality of that salt, as opposed to other types of salt, is this type of salt will not increase your blood pressure. So that's the type of salt typically that we would advise to someone who has high blood pressure. It's almost, you can consider as a substitute for regular salt. Okay. The next taste is pungent, and pungent is again made up of fire and air. And the effects that it has is it improves metabolism, it helps digestion and absorption. And the reason why it has these effects, again, is because of the presence of the fire element. Metabolism is basically based on a person, the fire element or the Agni in a person. The Agni is so important. I believe that was the previous chapter that you went through. And as you looked at, it really it's the basis of how a person actually assimilates and takes in what they consume. So sometimes you'll notice there are people who consume a lot of food. They consume a lot of food, but they actually are not obese and they're not really gaining from that. They eat a lot of food. They say they may eat healthy as well, but they still have a lot of health issues. And why is that? If their Agni isn't strong enough, if their metabolism isn't good, then you can consume all the things that are healthy, but your body doesn't have the ability to actually break that down and then send it out, absorb it, and send it out to the parts of the body that actually require that nutrition. Even if it gets to that part of the body, it doesn't have the energy to metabolize that and to break it down and actually consume it and use it for that a disease condition that it needs, or for the energy that it needs. So that's why metabolism is so important. And the pungent taste, because of the presence of fire, actually helps to increase that metabolism and helps for proper absorption, proper assimilation, and breakdown of whatever is consumed. The pungent taste also helps in removing blockages, improves circulation, and it relieves pain. Again, you would think because of the presence of air is again associated with Vata dosha, and this does help in increasing Vata dosha. But because of the presence of fire, it again balances it off. So it can increase Vata dosha, but not significantly enough for that to really cause a symptom or a sign or a discomfort, because of the presence of the fire element. And that also, because of the presence of the fire element, helps to pacify pain or helps to relieve pain. It can raise body temperature. It can be used to kill intestinal parasites and worms. It promotes sweating. And again, these are all representative of the elemental breakup of that. So an example of something that's pungent is pepper or ginger, jalapenos. Pungent really can be considered as that which is hot and spicy, something that really kind of brings out the heat. That's that taste that's pungent. So jalapeno, garlic has a lot of heat. It brings out a lot of heat. Onions, wasabi, anything that you consume and you can feel, you almost like you feel your body temperature rise, or as it comes in contact with your body, you can feel that heat rising. That's a pungent taste. Next is bitter, and bitter is made out of ether and air. So it's the exact combination as that of vata. So bitter does absolutely increase vata. It has the same composition, the same elements. So if you consume bitter, it will definitely increase vata. Like increases like. It also helps to purify blood because of the constant movement of it. It is catabolic. It reduces the person's body temperature because they're more cooling. It depletes the tissues. And again, that's because these are the lighter elements. They don't help in building in any way. it's complete opposite to that of sweet, because sweet will actually help as a building block. It produces structure, whereas bitter does not produce structure at all. It helps a person to lose weight. So that's actually a very good indication. Bitter foods are very good for people with diabetes because of the same thing, is that they're very light. These foods are very light, and it actually helps to cleanse the channels. And that's exactly what's happening with a person with diabetes, is that it actually, the diabetes tends to start to block the different channels in the body. So that's why bitter foods are very good for people who have this condition, because it actually helps to cleanse, and it helps to take away anything that's accumulated in excess in the body. So bitter is very good for those sort of conditions. So examples of bitter foods are green leafy vegetables. Neem is an excellent example of bitter. Aloe, also very good example of bitter. It's something that you really can't muster up to eat. If you've ever tried fresh aloe, the fleshy part of the aloe, it's very difficult to eat, and it's very bitter. But again, it has a lot of positive effects to it if consumed in the proper quantity and in the proper indication. And the last one is astringent, or kashaya. And the bitter and astringent both actually decrease salivation. They don't increase, or they don't promote salivation. And that's again because of the presence of the air and the ether element. They're drier elements. They're more lighter elements. They don't produce structure. They don't increase things. In fact, they only decrease. So that's why these two tastes, or foods predominantly with these two tastes, actually reduce salivation, and they tend to deplete. They're more catabolic in their functioning. So in that, astringent constricts blood vessels. It stops bleeding. It causes constipation. So that's a very good idea to understand, because kashaya rasa, or astringent, really does have that constipative effect. It literally tends to dry up. It absorbs the moisture in the person's body. So if a person has excessive moisture, or if you find that they have too much of kapha in a particular part of their body, or in their GIT, if they're retaining that, this is really good because of the fact that it kind of takes it away. It starts to absorb it. So in that sense, again, if there's a buildup or a blockage, astringent can be good because it really helps to take that out. In the other hand, if it's too much, again, it can be constipating as well. And the reason why it's constipating is it's not actually blocking the channel that causes the constipation. It's drying up the waste material. It's absorbing and taking up all of that moisture, and that's what's causing the constipation, not the blocking of the actual channel. But because it's taken up so much of the moisture, the waste material has become so dry that it can't move down, and that's what's causing the actual constipation. So examples for that is the peel of certain fruits, unripe bananas, pomegranate, turmeric, leafy green vegetables, cranberries. Cranberries is a great example of astringent, beans, and black tea. So these are examples of astringent. Okay, I think we've gone through a little bit of this. Let's just look at the dietary recommendations. So again, if you wanted to have foods that would help or pacify vata, you would look for sweet, sour, and salty, things which are warm and moist, and which are oily and cooked foods. Those will help in pacifying or help to maintain vata. Things which reduce vata, or which actually cause an aggravation of vata, are that which are bitter and pungent, astringent, dry, rough, and these are all actually similar qualities. So when you looked at qualities and how their relation to the doshas, these are again all the similar qualities. So it's the same thing for pitta. For pitta, you would have foods that are sweet, bitter, astringent. They're fruits and vegetables, things which are cooling. Those help in pacifying pitta or bringing it back to a normal level. Whereas things which would aggravate pitta are pungent, salty, sour, spicy, acidic, and all qualities that are similar to that of pitta would actually help to aggravate it. For kapha, again, foods that would actually help in pacifying kapha are pungent, bitter, astringent, things which are light, dry, and warm foods. Those help to pacify kapha. Things which were foods that would aggravate kapha are sweet, sour, salty, heavy, oily, rich foods, things that are sweet. So for instance, so milk chocolate is something that would actually increase kapha, whereas dark chocolate or closer to 100% chocolate would actually not increase kapha. So for those of you who love chocolate, the reason why they say dark chocolate is healthier is because dark chocolate actually is not sweet chocolate. It's quite bitter. And because of that, those types of chocolate will not increase kapha. In fact, it will decrease kapha. The only way you're going to get that to taste sweet is actually if you put the sugar in, and that's what contributes to the sweet taste of the chocolate, but not the actual chocolate itself. The actual quality of chocolate is more bitter, and that actually has the similar qualities of bitter taste and not of sweet taste. Okay? So that's a good thing to know. And as a general rule, when we're looking at diet, there's a saying that in a meal, when you're having a meal, in general, you should start with things that are sweet. So start your appetizer, whatever you start off your meal with should have a sweet taste to it. The main course of the meal should be sour and salty. And you should always end the meal with something that's either pungent, bitter, or astringent, sort of like a palate cleanser. That's the general rule of the actual courses that you should have in one meal sitting. The only exception to that is if you're having a meal that's very hot and spicy, then you should probably end with something sweet to just help balance off the presence of these particular tastes. Okay.
Great. Thank you, Anusha. That was wonderful. We want you to pay attention to the last remark that Anusha made. There's going to be a question given to you so that you all, we know that you've watched the video. Anyway, thanks again, Anusha. We'll see you on April 1st with the group again, and we'll touch upon Virya, Vipaka, and Prabhav at that time. So thanks so much. Have a great night.
Welcome. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.